All right, it's time to let's see here. All right, it's time to get started on this Panther-Lair post game. Not exactly where we expected to be, or where Pitt expected to be in the aftermath of today's game. Panthers, of course, host Miami, lose to Miami, 38-34 is the final score. Pitt drops to 6-2 on the season. They're 3-1 in the ACC. As Pat Narduzzi is wont to say, their goals are still in front of them. Everything they wanted to achieve is still there in terms of winning the Coastal Division, having a shot at the ACC championship game. And there are a lot of thoughts when you come out of a game like this. A lot of thoughts when you come out of a loss, an unexpected loss, at least in terms of betting lines, with Pitt opening as a double-digit favorite, which was always ridiculous. I don't think there was ever a reason to make them a 10 or 11-point favorite. Not that I didn't think they could win by that amount. And I think there were opportunities in this game where they could have won by that amount. But I don't think it was most likely that they would cover that kind of spread. But they still should have won this game. They still should have beat Miami. And there are a lot of reasons why they didn't. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing is I was driving home from Heinz Field after the game. As I was coming home and I was getting ready to start the start the podcast, start the post-game discussion, and I was thinking about this game and what to make of this game and this and that and different factors. It really, what kind of stood out to me is there's a lot. And it's always the case. There's always a lot of factors that go into a game. I mean, Pitt didn't beat Clemson last week for one reason. Pitt didn't beat Virginia Tech before that for one reason, or Georgia Tech. They didn't lose to Western Michigan for one reason. There's a lot of factors. And some factors are going to be more important than others. Some are going to loom larger in the outcome of the game. Certainly you have something today like the safety that wasn't. And I don't know if that really was a safety or not. I think you see the play, you see a handoff, and you see a guy getting tackled in the end zone, and you say, that's a safety. The ref on the sideline was very clear from the start that he got out of the end zone. The ref on the sideline was very clear from the start that he at least broke the plane going forward before he was knocked backward into the end zone, which would be forward progress. And the reviews, because the ACC network has just marvelous camera angles available and a multitude of cameras with which to look and get a perspective on the game. There was the opposite of that. You couldn't get a good view on it. Somebody had a cell phone camera from the stands that was getting tweeted around. I retweeted that, and it looks like he kind of leans forward out of the end zone. I think that play would have come down to whatever they ruled it on the field. There was never any visual evidence that you could find on film to overturn it. If they ruled it a safety, they weren't going to be able to overturn it. And if they ruled him forward progress to the one, well, they weren't going to be able to overturn it, and they didn't overturn it. And that play loomed very large. There's obviously no question about it. That play was very significant. And if that's a safety there and it becomes 38-36 and they're doing a drop kick to Pitt with, 2 minutes to go, 3 minutes, 4 minutes to go, whatever the time was at the point in that game, the outcome of the game likely changes because Pitt's trailing by 2. They need to get into field goal range off a drop kick, and they've got 3 timeouts. They used one to try to get a review on that play. But, that changes the outcome of the game. Or at least changes the direction of the game. But it was one factor in a game. It doesn't change the fact that then on the next play, 2nd and 11 from the 1, they gave up an 18-yard pass. And that's not about scheme. That's about personnel. Damari Mathis played off that guy and gave him a big cushion to catch an 18-yard pass that did change the game. And then you end up with the fumble out of bounds. Did it bounce back behind? What? You don't know what would have happened on 4th and 1 at the 28 if they had ruled that ball bounce out of bounds behind the lead stick. Maybe Miami goes for it. Maybe they punt. They're at the 28, nursing a 4-point lead. With time running down and Pitt not having any timeouts, maybe Miami just goes for it and tries to put the game away that way. And maybe they get it. You don't know. But don't give up 18 yards on 2nd and 11 from the 1, and it's not a problem. The safety call doesn't matter. The 4th and 1 decision or the review of the ball bouncing out of bounds doesn't matter. And Pitt had many opportunities in this game to win. on both sides of the ball. Many opportunities to win. And they fell short. And they fell short in a lot of areas. And there are a lot of factors that went into this loss. There are a lot of things. And the officiating is one of them, but it's not the number one factor. And we can run down the list of factors. And I think I have my opinion about the number one factor that cost them this game. You probably have your number one opinion. But even within that, like, I want to sit down here and I guess I'll just say it. We're only a few minutes in. Tackling. If you can't tackle, you're going to lose. Particularly when you're playing talented athletes like Miami has. I think Pitt's defense looks slow. I think those screens, those now routes that Pat Narduzzi talked about, those hit because Pitt was slow to get there. And you can talk about adjusting scheme and changing how they defended and this and that. They had their hands on those guys. Okay? 3-yard plays turned into 6 and 7 all too frequently. I made a list of plays where I wrote down the word screen in my notes. And I think those were those screen passes, those now routes that Pat Narduzzi talked about. And these are just the ones that my untrained eye saw. 8 yards, 20 yards, 4 yards, 12 yards, 13 yards, incomplete, -5. Got a couple of good ones there. 4 yards, 14 yards, 7 yards, no gain, 5 yards, 22 yards. You can't give up those kinds of plays because they blocked them well, but not that well. Not so well that you should have 2 of them go for 20 plus yards. That you should have 1, 2, 3 more go for 12, 13, and 14. And a 7 and an 8. And those are just the 14 screen passes that I wrote down in my notes. I think they probably had a few more. And when we look at those numbers from Pro Football Focus later in the week, it should be a season high for missed tackles. Because this defense tackled really poorly in this game. And Pat Narduzzi, we got a picture of him up right over there right now. He said it after the game. He said, quote, crappy tackling. And that's probably the nicest way to put it. You have to make plays. And you don't have to make exceptional, outstanding plays. Look, Kenny Pickett's first interception. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about both of his interceptions. It was a bad decision. But the Miami defender made a great play. Leaping interception. You don't even have to make plays like that. But when you have your hands on the guy with the ball, tackle him. Don't let him go. The 40-yard run for a touchdown doesn't need to be a 40-yard run for a touchdown. That could have been an 8-yard run if you just make a tackle. And these are basic, fundamental things that in the 8th game of the season, you're still having issues with. When you had issues with these things early in the season, when you had issues with these things at Tennessee and against Western Michigan, this team was not a very good tackling team early in the season. It seemed like they got some of those things resolved. But they didn't today. And it cost them. And Tyler Van Dyke, yeah, he looks really good. Going to be a problem for a couple years. He's a good quarterback. And it takes some talent. It takes a certain kind of skill, a certain level of skill to throw those screen passes. But he wasn't dropping dimes 50 yards down the field. He had a great throw on a trick play. He had a bad throw on another trick play. Although the guy probably dropped it on the flea flicker. What he did was throw screens and let his guys make plays. And fortunately for those guys, Pitt missed tackles. That to me is the number one issue here. The number one factor. Yeah, and they hit some RPO slants. They took advantage of Pitt on some of those plays where the defensive scheme was still exposed. There were certain, and I think when Pitt tried to adjust to a few things, Miami was get their running game going. They got some plays in the running game, but it really came back to if you make tackles when you've got your hands on the guy with the ball, a little more than Pitt did today, they win this game. It's not the only thing that if you changed it, they win. There are a couple other key things that I think lead to a Pitt win here. But that, to me, is the biggest one. That's what the issue was. It's not the only issue, but it was the issue. And it's an issue that has been a problem at various points this season. Now, if you go back to what we said over the last week, what we said over the last 2 weeks, what we said over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, basically every week since Western Michigan and maybe since Tennessee. And to be honest, probably if you go back and find Panther-Lair Show podcast from August, I said this, okay? I said that Sam Howell is going to get his yards against this defense. He's going to put up points. He's going to put up yards against this defense. It's what's going to happen. And after the Tennessee game, I said, okay, they had some real vulnerabilities. They had some things exposed. In the Western Michigan game, obviously, and we came out of that and you said, okay, there's a real problem here because you got Sam Howell and Brennan Armstrong waiting on the schedule, because at that point we realized Brennan Armstrong's going to throw for 500 yards against everybody at Virginia, and he's going to do it against this defense as well. What we didn't realize is that Miami was going to have a pretty good defense too, or a pretty good offense. We didn't realize that preseason, and we didn't realize that early in the season this year either. And so what you have is pretty much an expected outcome in terms of Pitt's defense not doing a great job against an opposing offense. And what's interesting is, they give up touchdowns on Miami's first 3 drives. After that, you have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 real drives. Not counting the end of the half and the end of the first half and the end of the game. You have 9 drives, and Miami scores 2 touchdowns and a field goal on those 9 drives. It's pretty solid, actually. It's pretty decent. They go punt, an interception, huge interception by John Patrician, terrible decision by a redshirt freshman quarterback in that situation. That play was on was it a third down, a fourth down? I have it right here. 3rd and 6 from the Pitt 30, right? And Van Dyke rolls out to his right. The receiver he wants to throw to is open on the other side of the sticks. He's open for a first down, but he falls. And so Van Dyke decides to still throw it. And he throws it to another guy who's not in the right position, and John Patrician picks it off. A more experienced quarterback, when he sees his primary target fall down, just throws the ball out of bounds, lives to play another day, and they kick a field goal and they go up by a touchdown. That doesn't happen. Patrician intercepts the pass, and Pitt starts driving the other way. You know what happened from there. And I'll tell you, the game was there to be won on the Pickett interception that followed. They were driving. They drove a 2nd and 18 from the 31 after a sack. But they drive. They're at the 31, and Pickett's got Jordan Addison for a touchdown. And maybe it was Pickett, and maybe it was Addison. I don't know who made the wrong decision there. I don't know who was on the wrong page. Somehow those guys did not think they were doing the same thing. And maybe that, and again, I don't know if that's on the quarterback, I don't know if it's on the receiver. Both of them after the game, all they would say is it was a mistake, it was a miscommunication. And I think Kenny took some of the blame and Jordan took some of the blame. It's what you would expect them to do. But the game was there to be won on that play. And quite frankly, Kenny Pickett's first interception was another touchdown play. He ends up throwing to Taysier Mack. I don't know why, because Jordan Addison in the middle of the field has a shot at the end zone. And it's remarkable. Jordan Addison finished this game. Let me get the stat book here because I've got the stat sheet. 11 targets, 8 catches for 145 yards. He doesn't score a touchdown, but he's got 8 catches for $145. Somehow, even a guy getting 11 targets didn't seem like enough. It seemed like they could have and should have gone to him even more than they did. He's your best offensive weapon, your best receiver. And they could have gone to him more than they did. They could have run the ball more than they did too. And now we're getting down into the lower factors that impacted this game. But when your 3 running backs, Vincent Davis, Izzy Abanikanda, and Ronnie Hammond combined for 13 carries, and on those 13 carries they have, 79 yards? Seems like you could probably get a little bit more out of that. And I'll tell you where it mattered. Okay? Their drive at the going into the fourth quarter, where they drive down. They've got a 1st and goal at the 5 after Pickett and Gavin Bartholomew link up on a 4th and 2 conversion. They get the ball to the 5. They've got 1st and goal at the 5. They've got Izzy Abanikanda on the field. And the first play they run is basically trying to run the same exact play to Gavin Bartholomew that just converted the 4th down. That one goes incomplete. 2nd down, 2nd and goal from the 5. They try a long pass across the field to the running back who's covered in the end zone, to Izzy Abanikanda. And then 3rd and 5, they try and run the trick play, the Pitt special. And they try and run that again. You look silly when you call a trick play that doesn't work. All right? You look like a genius when you call a trick play that does work. I would contend you screwed it up on the first 2 plays from the 5. Your backs are averaging 6 yards per carry. Hand it off to Abanikanda on 1st and goal from the 5. Hand it off again to him on 2nd and goal, probably from the 3, or maybe the 2, or maybe the 4. Okay? And then if you want to throw, to Jordan Addison in the end zone, or Jared Wayne in the end zone, or Lucas Krull, or Gavin Bartholomew, or even Vincent Davis, you want to bring him in. If you want to throw to them when you're 3rd and goal from inside the 5, throw it then. Again, we're getting down into the lower factors that impacted this game, but it was a 4-point score, and you have these opportunities. They end up settling for a field goal there that takes them from 38-31 to 38-34 when he could have taken it from 38-31 to 38-38. And we're talking about a different story. Little mistakes like that. And it's all of them adding up together. Again, I put at the top of the food chain, I put the poor tackling. I think that was the biggest issue. And it led to the touchdowns, but it also led to drives where they were able to extend drives and keeps Pitt's offense off the field. It's a lot of mistakes. A lot of issues. Not the end of the world, but a pretty disappointing loss when it feels like a win they could have had and should have had, and ultimately failed to get. All right, we got a lot of super chatters jumping in. We appreciate everybody who is coming in here and watching the live stream on Saturday night. You guys are not nearly as lively as last week. I don't know what's up with that. Kevin Ploucher, though, is a super chatter, and we appreciate it. He says, lots to say, but I've heard most of it already. Curious to hear your thoughts, Chris. TVD. Oh, Tyler Van Dyke was insane today. So was Pickett, but 2 interceptions at the worst times were costly. I appreciate you being a super chatter. I mean, Kenny Pickett goes 39-55 for 519, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. His second and third interceptions of the season. He's now up to 26 touchdown passes. First Pitt player in school history to have a 500-yard game. First Pitt player in school history to have 2 400-yard passing games in his career. I mean, he put up some big numbers. I think he made some big-time plays. The 2 interceptions were really bad. And I think the first one is a mistake by him. The second one, I don't know who ultimately did the wrong thing. But it seemed like on both of those plays, there were opportunities for big passes to Jordan Addison, and he missed them. Now, Pickett also made some great plays. I think he made some outstanding plays. I think both of his touchdown passes, Jalen Barden and Jared Wayne, those guys made really good catches, and Pickett made some big plays. He made a lot of big-time throws in this game, but he also made 2 of his worst mistakes of the season. Was this his worst game of the year? It's hard to say that when you throw for 519 yards, but some of that comes back to what I was talking about with the running game, where he probably should have, tried to establish it a little bit more. There was a situation earlier. Let's see if I can find it here. They end up, I think it might have been when they punted from the 39. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, they punt from the 39. This drive, we'll talk about this. It was 31-17. So we're in the second quarter here. I mean, you remember this drive. Pitt drives down. They get inside the Miami 40. They have an ineligible receiver downfield penalty on a 2nd and 10. And they end up pushing back to 2nd and 15 at the 44. And on 2nd and 15 at the 44, they hand it off to Rodney Hammond and he runs for 5 yards. Sets up 3rd and 10 from the 39, and they throw a pass to Lucas Krull that's incomplete. And I think, I just would have probably reversed that sequence a little bit. I think you have at that point where you're around the 40, the opponent's 40, you have the potential to be in 4-down territory. I think you really do. But I think when you're at 2nd and 15, I think you want to throw there and try and get 7 or 8, or 6 or 7, somewhere to get it, the down and distance under 10 yards, get it down to anywhere from 8 to 9, 7 to 9, something like that. And then on 3rd and 7, you can hand off or run a draw and chip away 3 or 4 more yards. And now you're at 4th and 4. And instead of, facing 4th and 10 from the 39, you're facing 4th and 4 from the 33. And then you absolutely go for it. And I think some fans automatically kind of jumped on the, I hate the punt decision. When Pitt decided to punt it 4th and 10 from the 39, I actually didn't have an issue with that. And I think so often we get caught up in where you are on the field. And that's important. That's a relevant factor. You have to consider that. Where are you on the field when you're deciding whether to punt or go for it or whatever you're going to do? But the distance also matters. And the further you get, the longer the distance is, I think the less likely you are to go for it. And 4th and 10 from the 39, I mean, I think that's a punt situation. And like, I know it's pretty popular to just be like, oh, you're punting from the plus territory. What are you doing? Well, on 4th and 10, I think you punt there. And the reality is it worked out perfectly. Like, it went exactly according to plan. And I'm not entirely an ends justify the means type of guy when it comes to these decisions. But the idea there was, okay, it's 4th and 10 from the 39. This is too long of a distance. You punt, you pin them, you get a stop on defense. They punted, they pinned them at the 8, and they forced a 3 and out. It was a good, and that was actually the 3rd and 2 from the 16. They ran a screen and lost 5 yards on it. Pitt played it really well. And they end up getting him to punt back. And the punt, Pitt gets it at the 45, at the Miami 45. So it all worked out exactly right. And again, I'm not I think it was the right decision before they made the decision. And I think when you look at the outcome, it was exactly what you wanted the outcome to be. You got great field position after you pinned them and got a defensive stop. Now, the very first play, they throw an interception. And so all that, that good idea went the other way. And the interception goes back, to the Pitt 37. They throw an RPO slant for 34 yards, and 3 plays later, they're in for a touchdown. And Miami goes up 31-17. Huge swing in the game there because you got exactly what you wanted. You got a great special teams play, you got great defense, and you are set up at the 45. You're ready to cut into the lead. It's 24-17 there. You have a chance to tie the game. And they throw an interception. And so we'll talk about defense. Like I said, I think missed tackles were the biggest problem. That's a huge issue. And this defense will be I've been saying it all week. They live on the edge. This defense does. I've talked about feast or famine. They live on the edge of giving up plays and giving up points and giving up yards. But in this situation, that's on the offense. That's on Kenny Pickett. That's a bad decision. It's a bad pass, and it's a bad time to throw it because now you went from potentially tying the game to being down 2 touchdowns. Huge, huge error. Huge mistake. Michael B., one of our regular super chatters, says, I don't know where even to begin. Chris, the defense is horrendous. Year 7, and you can't tackle and can't cover anyone, and the schemes suck. You can't be losing to under 500 teams at home in year 7 under Pat Narduzzi. I'm sick of him. Well, at least, we're back to that. The scheme is what it is. We've seen that it's not going to change. And if you make tackles, then it works better than when you don't. And in this case today, they missed tackles. And that's not to absolve the coaches. The coaches are responsible for getting the players ready to play. The coaches are responsible for making sure guys have those fundamentals down. The coaches are responsible. It ultimately falls on them. But the players have to take some of it too. The players have to make plays. And you don't have to make crazy, ridiculous, outstanding plays. But if you've got your hands on the guy with the ball, you need to tackle him. You got to make those plays. Because when you don't, you lose at home to a team that's 3-4 now. And I think they're better than a 3-4 team. I think as they continue to grow with this offense, with this quarterback, I think they'll have a few more wins the rest of the way. I think they'll play well the rest of the way. And I don't know if they're going to go 8-4 or anything like that and win out the rest of the way, but I think they will have some success. I think they have the makings of a pretty talented offense. And when you've got a talented offense that plays well, you can beat a lot of teams, most teams. Let's see here. Crosby Malkin 07 jumps in as a super chatter. I appreciate it. I don't see your comment, but if you got something to say, go for it, and we will be sure to get to it. I think that's all the super chatters for now. Let's see what else you guys have to talk about. Coaster King says, why does it feel like every Miami game comes down to trashy officiating that always helps Miami? I mean, the officiating was bad today. I think it was bad on a lot of teams, or in a lot of ways. I don't know if it always helped Miami, but it was questionable all around. I didn't like the roughing the passer penalty on Servassier Dennis. I thought John Morgan was a little less dicey than Dennis's call, but I thought they were both kind of questionable. And I think there was probably 1 or 2 times they could have called one on the guys that hit Kenny Pickett. You get into pass interference penalties. Eric Hallett has to be smarter on that situation because there's an interception there to be had. Damari Mathis gets the interception, but he ends up getting a pass interference penalty on Eric Hallett that overturns it. I mean, I thought the officiating kind of stunk overall. Lucas Krull, that hit on Lucas Krull. First of all, I'm shocked that Lucas Krull even came back in the game. He seemed to be motionless, after that hit early in the game, but he came back out and played the rest of the way. I was surprised about that. I understand if you don't want to call targeting there. Krull, I guess, lowered his head. I think you still could have called targeting there, but that's fine. The guy then taunted him. The guy stood over him and gesticulated, if you will. I mean, that should be at least worth a flag. I would think. Again, that's one of those factors that you look at and say, well, the officiating impacted this game. The officiating affected the game. Whether it's a safety call or it's a fumble out of bounds or it's a missed roughing the passer penalty or it's a taunting call that should have gone, whatever it is. The officiating impacted the game, but not as much as Pitt's missed tackles, right? Not as much as the interceptions. It's just there are a lot of factors that go into it. Let's see here. Pitt Oriole says it's unacceptable for the defense to be so bad in year 7. Brock McDonagh says, I don't know how a team can be that horrific at tackling. Yeah, I don't either. I mean, they need to be a lot better because, look, Sam Howell is a better quarterback than Tyler Van Dyke. Brennan Armstrong is a better quarterback than Tyler Van Dyke. And these were, coming out of the Clemson game, I think as you started looking ahead at the final 5 games, those were the 3 big offenses you were going to face, the 3 talented offenses. Miami, I think, is a bit of a surprise as one of the talented offenses, but they are certainly there. And I think we knew that coming into the game. I think you knew that they were a good offense. And now you've got Sam Howell and Brennan Armstrong to contend with in a few weeks. I mean, it's going to be more of the same, which means, A, you need to get better at tackling. B, those guys are still going to put up yards because Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech threw for 300 yards against this offense or against this defense. And C, and perhaps most importantly, man, you got to score 50. You should go into every game expecting to score 50, feeling like you need to score 50. And I think this Duke game next week should be a good warm-up. They should be able to go down to Duke and put up 45 or 50 points. That should be that kind of game. And then get ready for North Carolina and look to do the same thing. Assume that they're going to score 49, so you need 50. And I think that has to be the assumption going into it. You can't say, well, our defense will help it. Your defense isn't going to help you. Your offense has to carry the day. Kenny Pickett has to carry the day for this team. That's just the simple reality. And this isn't an immediate reaction to this game because they've been living on the edge defensively all season. And you can look at the Tennessee game with all the mistakes and the overthrows. You can look at the Georgia Tech game with missed guys, missed opportunities. You can look at the Clemson game where Will Shipley drops a touchdown pass. They had a couple other, clear and present mistakes where the coverage was not good. Just because it went for an incomplete pass doesn't mean the coverage was good. As a matter of fact, the coverage was bad. And that's why the throw was made to that area, and it was incomplete because it was either dropped or was overthrown or it was poorly played. This defense has been living on the edge all season, and they will continue to do so, for the rest of the year. And so you're going to have to assume that you need 50 every game. It's just the reality of it. Tyler Long says the defense is slow and the offensive line was brutal today. Yeah, Kenny Pickett got sacked 4 times. I mean, that's an issue, big time. I don't think they, I don't think they protected very well. I would have liked to have seen them try to run the ball a little bit more and take some of the edge off that pass rush, which they just never did. Like I say, 13 carries for the running backs today, with those guys averaging about 6 yards per carry. It didn't make a lot of sense to not go to them more. I understand you're trailing a lot in this game, but it never felt like Miami's lead, even when it was 31-17, it never felt like it was too far out of reach. Like they couldn't close the gap. It never felt like they didn't have enough time. So they didn't need quick strike offense. They didn't need to throw the ball like that. To move real fast and get back in the game. They weren't that far out of it. I think you could have tried to establish the running game a little bit more. And maybe if you had and shown some commitment to running the ball, maybe you'd find yourself, maybe you'd find Miami taking some of the heat off that pass rush that was giving Kenny Pickett problems. And I think by the end of the first half, I don't know what Kenny Pickett would say, But I think by the end of that first half, I think he was, I don't know what the word is. It's not scared, but I think he was feeling pressure, and I think you see some of his passes, particularly late in that half. Actually their last drive of the half, they get the ball down to the Miami 31 and, where were we? Okay, so it was first and 10. Kenny Pickett scrambles. They get a flag on Carter Warren that pushes the ball back to the 36 for a first and 20. Pickett scrambles for 2 yards. They get second and 18 at the 34. Pickett has a little check down dump off pass to Vincent Davis for 3 yards. And then, third and 15 from the 31. It's another check down pass to Vincent Davis for nothing. And Pitt ends up missing the field goal. Sam Scarton missed the 49-yard field goal. And I think by that point, I think Kenny Pickett was, a little bit shook by the pressure. I mean, it's just kind of what it looked like. I'm sure he would say that wasn't the case, but it's what it looked like. And I think, he needed to go into the halftime and settle down a little bit, which he did. And they come out and score a touchdown on their first drive in the second half. But yeah, I mean, I think they didn't protect Kenny Pickett as well today as they have in the past. Stashy is a super chatter. He says, "Is this the year the ceiling for what Pitt accomplishes under Pat Narduzzi? We've now had 2 championship caliber offenses under Pat fall short because of defense. Likely finishes 2-2 for 8 wins, 9 at best." If they finish 8-4, it'll be a pretty big disappointment for this team. I never thought they were going to win out, and I think you can go back and you're not going to find receipts on that. I never thought they were going to win out. I said all along there probably is another loss somewhere in here. I wasn't sure where it was going to come because, you come out of the Clemson game and you look at them sitting there at 6-1 and you say, all right, if I look at these 5 opponents, each of these 5 opponents in a vacuum, I would pick Pitt to beat each of them. And it's still the case. If I look at the final 4 opponents, if you take each game sort of individually, I would say, yes, I think Pitt will beat Duke. If you were telling me that Pitt was playing North Carolina this Saturday, I would say, yes, I believe Pitt will beat North Carolina. You say I would believe Pitt would beat Virginia, and I believe Pitt would beat Syracuse. And I said that, I would have said it about I believe Pitt will beat Miami. So, each game individually, I would pick Pitt to win. But when you string them all together, 5 wins in a row, and really, I mean, after the Western Michigan game, it would be nine wins in a row, right? If they were to rattle those all off, I didn't see that as being likely. I thought they would lose one of those games somewhere in there. They got out of Virginia Tech, they got out of Georgia Tech, they got out of Virginia Tech, they beat Clemson. Somewhere in the final 5, there was going to be a loss. I don't know where it would be. It came today, and now they're 6-2. And so in these final 4 games, I think somebody said it really well on Twitter. They've taken away their margin for error in terms of winning the Coastal Division. All right, because the game against Virginia in a few weeks is the one that looms the largest. Mostly because Virginia at 4-2 in the conference doesn't have an ACC game in the next 3 weeks. They're at BYU tonight. They are off next week, and then they host Notre Dame the week after that before they come to Pitt. And so between here and there, there's no opportunity for Virginia to take a conference loss and give Pitt an opportunity to clinch the division. It's all going to come down to that game between those 2 teams, provided Pitt doesn't lose, hopefully not at Duke and not to North Carolina on that Thursday night. As it stands, even if they lose one of those games, that game against Virginia will be for the division. That'll be the division title. Although if you lose another one of those games, if you lose to Carolina between now and then, you've now got Miami breathing down your neck as a 2-loss team in the conference. If they continue to win, you took away some of your margin for error. And again, this was a point I saw made on Twitter. My thought on this team is not that different now than it was yesterday. As a matter of fact, I wrote in the 321 column on Panther-Lair.com yesterday that I thought there would be an off game for the offense at some point. They would have a slip up. They would have a stumble. There would be a game where this offense did not play as well as it did at Virginia Tech, at Georgia Tech, and really for most of the game against Clemson. There would be a stumble. And it happened. It happened today. But they can't have it happen again. What I was saying, that was my thought on the team yesterday, was that this offense would have a stumble, was that this defense was living on the edge, was that this defense would be susceptible to points and yards. And I said it to anybody who would listen all week that these guys would probably put up some points on Pitt's defense. These guys would probably put up some yards on Pitt's defense. The key was going to be that the offense didn't slip up. The key was going to be that the defense made just enough plays, maybe got a turnover or two, confused Tyler Van Dyke a little bit, and did just enough to sort of keep him at arm's length while the offense continued to roll at a high level. Well, neither one of those things happened. That's what I thought this team needed to do. That's who I believe they were yesterday, and it's who I believe they are today. And it's going to be the case when they go to Duke. I don't think Duke is going to be able to move the ball against this defense the way some of these other teams have, or way some of these other teams probably will. And I also don't, but once you get to North Carolina, it's going to be a matter of outscoring them. It's going to be a matter of winning a shootout, because that offense is going to move the ball on these guys. And Virginia's going to do it too. And so it's going to be a matter of winning a shootout, because that's who this team is. If the offense has an off day, if they have a couple bad, poorly timed interceptions, and they have to settle for field goals, 3 times, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble. Now, I'm of the opinion that I don't think that'll happen too many more times. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen again. I would expect this offense to play well each of the next 4 games. And if they do, they should be in great position to win each of those 4 games. But if they lose one of those games, now they're in real danger of losing the Coastal. And if that happens, it's a pretty disappointing fall for a team that was in really strong position after 7 games. Really strong position. T-Man says, to keep things in perspective, Pitt won 4 in a row coming off a loss. Winning the next 4 will have us in the ACC championship game and end up with a very good season with a 10-2 record. Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. Even though some people say, they're not winning 4 more. Well, granted, they came out of the Western Michigan game and only won 3 ACC games in a row, but they beat New Hampshire and then got 3 ACC games in a row. They can beat every one of these teams. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. If you don't think they can beat every one of these teams, then you're clouding your judgment based on what happened today. All right. To some extent, what happened today was sort of evidence of what they can do against each of these final 4 teams. That's also evidence of what can happen against them. We saw it today where Jordan Addison, 8 for 145. Jared Wayne, 6 for 78 and a touchdown. Tayseer Mack, 5 for 92. Lucas Kroll, 4 for 48. Izzy Benacanda catches a touchdown pass. Jalen Barden has 1 catch for a great touchdown. That there's a lot of offensive weapons on this team. That Kenny Pickett's really good. That these guys can make plays. That's their strength. And that's why they can be competitive with every one of these 4 teams. But we also saw some of the issues. And if you can't tackle that well, if you let guys make 7-yard plays when you should have them stopped after 3, then you're going to be in danger against these teams as well. So we saw a little bit of all of it. But I haven't really changed my opinion on this team at all. I didn't talk about playoffs in recent weeks, because I wasn't thinking in those terms. Let's see Pitt take care of its business in the regular season and move on from there. Michael B. doubling up as a super chatter this week. Appreciate you. Says, are we fans stuck with this guy even if we end up going 8-4? When is enough, Chris? Wasn't Narduzzi hired as a defensive guru? We're in year 7 and they had 22 missed tackles. 8-4 and he needs to go. Is 22, is that the official number or is that your number? Where did that... I'm not sure if that stat... I'm going to look at... Pro Football Focus is where I usually get stats. I don't know if they have anything up yet from this game. No, they don't have anything up yet from this game, so I'm not going to be able to verify or confirm your numbers. But look, if they go 8-4, you probably don't fire him, right? I don't think it's a good idea to fire an 8-win coach. You can be disappointed. You can feel like you should have been better than this, but I don't know. I'm not convinced that they're going to go 8-4. I'm not convinced they're going to lose 2 of these final 4. I wouldn't be surprised if 9-3 is the final result. I think 10-2 is still very much in reach, and should be, and obviously is what they should be shooting for. Because if they go 10-2, if they can win these next 4 games, then they're playing in Charlotte. And whoever they're going to play in Charlotte, I mean, is there anybody that they would play in Charlotte in the ACC championship game if they make it there? Is there anybody from the Atlantic Division that you're terrified of? I don't think so. I think Wake Forest looks like Wake Forest looks like they have a good offense, but they don't. I think Pitt should be able to still score on them. There's nobody that really concerns me in the Atlantic Division. But obviously they got to take care of business to get there. Joe New, as a super chatter, says, Pat Narduzzi looked and sounded a lot like Rich Rodriguez after 13-9. What do you think? I think he was really disappointed. I think he felt like his team had a lot of good momentum. I think he liked seeing the respect that his team was getting. I think he likes winning. And I think he gets excited. He likes the pressure of having to play with expectations. And I think he was really disappointed. No coach, I can't say this is a hyperbole, but no coach has ever been as despondent after a game as Rich Rodriguez was after the 13-9 game. His team lost an opportunity to go to the national championship. That's far more considerable than what Pitt lost by losing to Miami today. So, Talk is Pitt says, if Kenny Pickett is that good, then why is he missing wide open players each game and multiple times? Missed Jordan Addison twice, missed Taylor Taysir Mack twice, missed Lucas Krull once. The thing I would say about that is he threw 55 freaking passes. When you throw 55 passes, a few of them might be off target, particularly when you're under pressure. I think that, you give him a pass. I think he played really, really well. Christian Ricketts says Pitt didn't show any exotic looks on D. I wish they would have been more creative and try to confuse the young quarterback. Yeah, it was interesting. They didn't really use their Delta defensive package all that much. That's their third down defense. It's kind of like a 3-4 almost is how they use it. I'm looking here. Yeah, Miami had 12 third downs, and I don't even see a lot on third down. I guess maybe they were going hurry up, and so Pitt didn't have an opportunity to substitute. But I don't think. They didn't do that as much, although it's not all that exotic because they do it every game. That's their main, third down defense. But yeah, I think they could have done more to try and confuse Tyler Van Dyke. But again, he's throwing those screen passes, those now routes. Again, I counted 14. 14 passes. He threw 42. So, a third of his passes were those kinds of, a third of his passes were those now routes, those screen passes. So, let's see here. Andy Rolo says they can lose 3 out of the 4. Yeah, they can lose all 4. They could forfeit. Their bus could crash off the side of a cliff. A lot of things could happen. I don't think they're going to lose 3 out of the 4. Could they lose to Duke? Could they lose to Carolina? Could they lose to Virginia? Could they lose to Syracuse? Yes. And I would have said that same answer to that question if they had won today. They can lose to anybody. It's college football. Just about everybody can lose to just about everybody. There's maybe 1 or 2 teams at the very top, and then there's a whole bunch of everybody else and a few teams at the very, very bottom. And Pitt's in that group of a whole bunch of everybody else. And there are things that they do really well that pushes them up closer to the top of that group. And there are things that they don't do so well that pushes them down lower in that group. That's just the reality of what college football is this year. Just about anybody can lose to just about anybody. Pitt should not lose to Duke. And Pitt is very much capable of beating Carolina, Virginia, and Syracuse. And I believe that. And I know a couple people were pointing out, Wake Forest, their offense, Pitt couldn't stop Western Michigan. And Wake Forest would put up points and yards on this defense. I don't deny that. And I said it about Miami, and I said it about Carolina, and I said it about Virginia. I'm not pretending that this defense is something that it's not. It's a porous defense. And if they don't make tackles like they did today, then they're going to give up a lot of yards and a lot of points. Tyler Van Dyke, 426 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's what you're going to give up if you tackle like Pitt did today. But I think this offense is also better than they showed today. They can clean up those mistakes. Kenny Pickett had 1 interception in the first 7 games, and he throws 2 today. Now, you tell me what's the norm. You tell me what is typical for this offense. I would contend it's what he did through 7 games rather than 1 game. I'm willing to concede that maybe they had a bad game. I'm willing to concede that maybe Pickett made some bad decisions, and I don't expect him to do that again next week, and I don't expect him to do that against Carolina or Virginia or Syracuse, or if they go to the ACC title game, I don't expect him to do that against Wake Forest or whoever they play there. Let's see here. Scrolling through some more questions that we got here. 1-2 says, run the table, LOL, be serious. Maybe we can start with defending a bubble screen. Maybe they could start by making a tackle, right? I mean, like, defending a bubble screen makes it seem like, oh, they just had a terrible defense in. They had guys there. I bet if you watched every one of those screen passes, they had their hands on the receiver at some point. They just didn't, they didn't make the tackles. They didn't make the plays. All right, and that's what it is. Talk as Pitt says, our defense is trash, and I will say it again, we have the wrong O-line personnel on the field. What O-line personnel do you want? Because I saw an offense that just, pretty much dominated the fourth quarter each of the last 3 games, running the ball, protecting their quarterback with the O-line personnel that they've used for most of the season. So you tell me, what O-line changes do you feel like you need? Let's see here. John Christofich says, I'm afraid of Wake Forest. Wake Forest is for real. Wake Forest is beating Duke 45-0. Well, I mean, that should be what Pitt is shooting for next week, too. Yeah, I mean, Pitt should be able to hang 50 on Duke. And I would expect them to go out and do that next week. Again, I would like to see Wake Forest defense against Pitt's offense. Because I still think Pitt's offense is really good. I think their quarterback is really good. I think their receivers are really good. And I think their running backs are really, really good, too. Steve Respect jumps in as a super chatter. We appreciate it, Steve. I don't know if you have a comment or question, but if you do, you can throw it in there. But we appreciate you supporting the podcast. Let's see here. 1-2 asks, where's MJ Devonshire been? Not that he's any good. And Rashad Battle, I think Devonshire is a pretty good player. I don't know if he's been hurt, but he hasn't played the last 2 weeks. They've stuck with Damari Mathis, Marquez Williams, and AJ Woods. AJ Woods has been the guy that's getting a lot of play in the last 2 weeks. I think he's played pretty well. Rashad Battle was, I think he's been hurt, actually. I don't think he's been playing much at all. They really haven't rotated the safeties hardly at all. I think last week, Eric Hallett played every snap against Clemson. Brandon Hill played all except one. There was one play where he got hurt and Judson Tallender came in. And then this week, Hallett and Hill were out there for every snap on defense. Maybe that's the issue. But I don't know if they have any better options to put back there. I think those guys are their best options at safety, and that's why they play so much. Ian Sowers says, we were watching the best quarterback in probably 15 years. I LOL anytime someone tries to blame Kenny. Look, I think you can absolutely say that Pickett made some really bad decisions on a couple plays today. I think the first interception was a poor decision by him. The second interception was either him or Addison. I'm not sure who, but there was a missed opportunity for a touchdown. But he is still playing at a remarkably high level this season. And what he did today doesn't overshadow everything else he has done all season. He's the reason they are where they are right now. Michael B., a 3-time super chatter. We have not had this before. I appreciate it. Says, I want to give a special shout out to Eric Hallett. I can't remember a worse performance by a Pitt defensive back in years. Is there really nobody better? I mean, like, do you remember 2016? I mean, like, did you watch the 2016 season? Because, I mean, Pitt had some pretty rough defensive back performances that year. Tyler Buchanan says, I honestly feel we as fans of football were robbed of an exciting finish at the game today. Yeah, I mean, it would have been really exciting. I mean, certainly more exciting for the home team than it was for Miami if that play had been called a safety. But it wasn't. And this is what I said, like, there's so many factors that go into it, and you can blame this and you can blame that and you can blame officiating, but the reality is when there's an officiating call that goes a certain way, you have to react and respond to it. And Pitt, yeah, maybe they should have had a safety. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that there were no good reviews, no good replays that could have overturned the call either way. If they called it a safety, I don't think replay could have overturned it. And if they called him forward progress to the one, I don't think replay could have overturned that. I think it looks close enough that he got across the goal line just ever so slightly. But the reality is, even if they give him the ball at the 1, 2nd and 11 at the 1, don't give up an 18-yard pass. Pressure the quarterback and make a stop. Don't let him get 18 yards downfield and then, before you make the tackle. You have to make the play there. And it safety or no safety. You had another opportunity. That when they called it forward progress to the 1, the game didn't end. There was another play, and they failed to make it. CG says, "Do you think this game will negatively impact Kenny's draft stock?" Some of it. Some of it was questionable decisions. I think, but he also made some really good throws and some good plays on his feet, some scrambles, to pull up and throw. I think it wasn't his best game, but I think there's still a lot that you put on. I think there's still a lot that you put on his highlight film. Dave Bolowitz says, if the runner would have broken tackles and run for 50 yards, would they have spotted it at the 1? Yeah, Dave, that's always the thing with forward progress rules and calls. I don't care. It's so tricky. It's like, oh, well, he got forward progress, and even though he was still trying to run, we ruled him down back. He was still trying to run, and he lost 5 yards, but we're gonna call him at forward progress. Whereas if he was still trying to run and he broke free, we'll let him go as far as he wants. I agree with you, but it's just what the rule is, and it's unfortunate because Pitt made a play with a lot of heart, and I think it sapped him a little bit when that thing got, didn't get ruled a safety. I have to think it took a little bit of a wind out of their sails at a time when they needed every bit that they could get. Let's see here. Ian Sowers says, speaking of that pass play after the safety, the ACC cameraman screwed that up royally. They held the camera on Tyler Van Dyke the entire time. Yeah, you're going to have this. There are going to be times where the cameraman doesn't show you what you want to see. It's just kind of what it is, You're going to have that from time to time. Listen, I didn't even tell you about home field. I got more things to say about this. Here's Steve Riesbeck. Here we go. Super Chatter jumps in. He says, I've gone to Pitt games since the Dave Hart days of 1969, 1970. This is a good team. It's fun to watch. I love Pitt football for 50-plus years. This will pass 10-2 ACC championship. I like it, Dave. I like that comment. I appreciate you jumping in with a little bit of positivity because, look, I think if you really sit down and think about this Pitt team and try to remember what you thought of them Friday afternoon. All right, Friday afternoon, what did you think of this Pitt team? What were its strengths? What were its weaknesses? Where could it beat teams? Where was it vulnerable to be beaten? And I think if you look at it from that perspective, there shouldn't be that much that changes now. If you were convinced that this was some shutdown defense that wasn't going to give up any points or any yards, based on what? You were probably the same people, somebody who's sitting there saying, like, I can't believe how much this defense stinks. You saw these things earlier in the season, that these vulnerabilities, these weaknesses existed. All right, your opinion shouldn't be changed. And if you came in, if Friday afternoon you thought, all right, I think this team can win 10 games. I think 10 games would be great, and I think that's what they're capable of. I don't know why you wouldn't still be thinking that. You were already building in a loss, whether it's now or another game later in the season. So I can't imagine that your opinion on this team has changed too much unless you weren't realistically taking stock of who they were and where they were on Friday. I think if you look at what the team looked like on Friday, what the perception was on Friday, it shouldn't be that different on Saturday after this game, because I think this game in a lot of ways fell in line with what they've been for the most part of the season. The difference is there were a few more mistakes on offense, and some sloppier tackling on defense. But by and large, I think they are kind of who they are. And, I think that's who they are. And so I think when they face, I think, you go forward in these final 4 games, I don't know how dangerous Syracuse's offense is. I think their quarterback is a running. Their quarterback's a running threat. They have a really good running back, so they can move the ball like that. But I feel like Pitt's going to be able to get after them. And I think, same thing with Duke. They should be able to play well. The key is going to be Carolina and Virginia. Carolina's offensive line looks suspect. So I think even if Sam Howell is able to put up some points and yards, you should be able to offset that with some negative plays, either sacks or TFLs or forcing him into bad decisions and mistakes. And then Virginia, it's going to be a shootout. It might be 65-63. And you have to be ready to play that kind of game. You have to be willing to play that kind of game. And I think Pitt can score on Carolina and score on Virginia. They have to start first with scoring on Duke, and that's what they'll look to do next Saturday. This is it's a disappointing loss because it's a game I believe they could have won. It's a game I believe they should have won, and they were capable of beating Miami, and they fell short for no mysterious reasons. It's pretty clear why that happened, and so they've got hone the things that they do well, get back to the things that they do well, and try and clean up the things that they did poorly. Listen, even though it's a loss, you're still a Pitt fan, you need to check out Home Field. All right, I know this is a tough sell after a loss, but listen, your favorite football team may have lost a game, but you still like really good T-shirts, right? HomeFieldApparel.com. Great Pitt. I don't have the shirt on now because I'm wearing what I wore to work, but Home Field's got great shirts, high quality fabric with awesome designs. They're just, it's an awesome product. HomeFieldApparel.com. Take out some of your sorrows and go buy a T-shirt, right? What makes you happier? It's retail therapy, right? And also, if you're a first-time shopper there, you can use the promo code LAIR, LAIR, and get 15% off your order. So go do that. And Pitt lost today, but you don't have to lose. You can get a great shirt. HomeFieldApparel.com. Make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends, Panther-Lair.com. The message boards are buzzing. There's no doubt about it. The message boards are buzzing, and they're going to be buzzing all week, I think. Leading up to the game at Duke next Saturday. I appreciate everybody tuning in on the live stream tonight on Saturday night. I appreciate everybody who listens to the podcast through the week. Remember, Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m., we've got our weekly Panther-Lair show. We'll be here talking about how Pitt moves from Miami to Duke and any new topics that come up between now and then and what we're thinking about. So make sure you tune in for that right here on the YouTube channel. Listen, if you want to make sure you never miss one of our live streams, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the notifications so you get a notification when we go live. So after the game on Saturday, the Duke game will go live at some point after the game. Never know exactly what time. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, turn on notifications, we'll let you know. You get a little buzz. It says, hey, Panther-Lair is about to go live. Let's talk about the game. So make sure you do that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, Pitt loses 38-34. It happens. 6-2 overall, 3-1 in the ACC. 4 more games to play. A lot of this season is the story of this season is yet to be told. So stay tuned with us. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of the weekend, and we will talk to you on Wednesday night.